Hey, what's up guys? Hardleg Joe here with the deck profile for the Vendread Mill deck, as brought to you by Patreon sponsor Christian Meek. I'm just going to go through everything in here, and then I'll explain how it works. So for monsters, we're playing 3 Vendread Revenants, 3 Mizuki, 3 Shiranui Spirit Master, 2 Necroface, 3 Shiranui Solitaire, 3 Vendread Hound Horde, 2 Vendread Strix, 3 Revendread Slayer, 3 Unizombie, and 3 Shiranui Spectral Sword. Our spells are 3 Pre-Preparations of Rites, 3 Gold Sarcophagus, 3 Revendread Origin, 2 Twin Twisters, 2 Burial from a Different Dimension, and 3 Vendread Knights. Our traps, 3 Shiranui-style Sword Slash, and 3 Shiranui-style Samsara. Our extra deck is 1 Sun Saga, 1 Shogun Saga, 1 Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, 1 Psyframelord Omega, 1 Samurai Saga, Archfiend Zombie Skull, Revived King Hades, Stardust Charge Warrior, Ally of Justice Catastor, Herald of Arclight, Coral Dragon, number 41 Baguska, Gagaga Cowboy, Decode Talker, and Akashic Magician. The side deck I'll go over in a moment. So I should point out right off the bat that this is a mill deck, pretty much in name only. It was designed as a mill deck, but oftentimes you're going to be able to kill your opponent the old-fashioned way before you're able to mill. But it is based around milling, so I'm going to start by explaining that portion of it. We've got Necroface. If this card is normal summon, shuffle all banished cards into the deck, and this card gains 100 for each card shuffle into the deck by this effect. And if this card is banished, each player banishes 5 cards from their top of their deck, or their entire deck if less than 5. That second effect is what we're going to be using to mill our opponent out. Basically, you're going to banish it, then return it to the graveyard, banish it again, over and over again until your opponent runs out of cards. And we've got 50 cards, so we'll hopefully run out before them. And even if we start to get close, we're also playing the Shiranui-style Samsara. This is a pretty good trap on its own. It's continuous. Its name is Shiranui-style Synthesis while it's in the spell trap zone, which is mildly important. But it has 2 main effects. 1, you can banish a face-up zombie-type monster you control to take no damage this turn, even if this card leaves the field, which can not only be used to banish your Necroface if you put it on the field, but it can also be used to stall by banishing any of your other zombie-type monsters, and some of your Shiranuis gets effects when they're banished too, so it works out. And then, probably more importantly, once per turn during either player's turn, you can target 2 of your banished zombie monsters with 0 defense, shuffle them both into the deck, and then draw 1 card. So all your Shiranui monsters, in addition to Revendread Slayer and Unizombie, all have 0 defense. So a lot of the monsters in your deck you're going to be able to shuffle back. So if it gets close where you and your opponent are both near mill, or if your opponent has more cards in their deck than you, you could start shuffling them back during both turns to get some of your resources back into the deck. As for how to banish Necroface, there's several ways we can do it in this deck. Probably the easiest one is just Gold Sarcophagus. Banish 1 card from your deck face up. During the second standby phase, after this activation, add that card to your hand. So you can activate this, and it'll immediately just banish 5 cards from the top of both players' decks. 2 turns later, you'll get this back, and then at that point, if you want to summon this and just get the attack boost, you can. Most likely, though, you're just going to send it to the graveyard to use it for one of the other things, most notably Shiranui Spectral Sword. Basically, this card's effect is the turn, except for it was sent to the graveyard, you can banish it and another zombie non-tuner from your graveyard to synchro summon a zombie synchro from your extra deck, and it counts as a synchro summon. So if you have this and Necroface into the graveyard, you can banish both of them in order to get either Archfiend Zombie Skull, Revived King Hades, or your Samurai Saga. You can, of course, use this with any of your other monsters that are in the graveyard, because we're playing exclusively zombies to get some of these bigger ones like Shogun Saga and Sun Saga. I won't really be going over the extra deck. It's mostly just sort of a toolbox. You can use these things if you want, or you could just have 3 copies of Samurai Saga. It's all up to your taste. I'd recommend running all the zombie synchros that you can. The only thing that's really super important is Psyframelord Omega, which you can't make with Spectral Sword, at least from the graveyard. But you can make it with other ways I'll go over later. But the reason I'm bringing this up right now is because it has an effect during your opponent's standby phase. You can get 1 banished monster and put it back in the graveyard, which is critical because that, along with Burial from a Different Dimension, is the only way we get Necroface back into the graveyard after we banish it. So not only do you want to banish this, but you want to make Psyframelord Omega as soon as you can, and then just use this when you get the chance, which this is just target 3 banished monsters, return them to the graveyard. Very simple. Before I go into making Psyframelord Omega, though, there's one other way you can banish your Necroface, and that's with Revendread Slayer. This is the main boss monster of the Revendread portion of the deck. You can ritual summon it using any Vendread ritual spell, of which we just have the one. And most notably, this lets you ritual summon a Vendread either from your hand or your graveyard, so you can discard this to the graveyard for effects and still summon it out with Revendread Origin. And probably more importantly, you can tribute monsters either from your hand or field, or banish zombie monsters from your graveyard, whose levels equal or exceed the level of the monster you're doing. So if you have Necroface in the graveyard, which there's a lot of ways to get in the graveyard, I'll explain later, you can then banish it with Revendread Origins to use as tribute fodder for Slayer, and that will again activate its effect. In addition, this card has the effect that during damage calculation, you can banish one zombie from your graveyard. This card gains 300 attack. So if you use other cards to make this, or maybe you had Necroface in your hand, you used Origin to put it in the graveyard, when you attack with Slayer, you can then banish it to get its effect then. This has one more additional effect that's mildly interesting. If this Ritual Summon card is sent to the graveyard, you can add one Ritual spell from your deck to your hand, and if you do, send one Vendread monster from your deck to the graveyard. And your Vendread monsters, 2 of them at least have effects in the graveyard. The other ones you can just use as fodder for when you banish it, or you can use to Ritual Summon it again, because again, you can Ritual Summon it from the graveyard as long as you have Origins. Origins, in addition to Ritual Summoning while it's in the graveyard, if your Revendread Slayer would be destroyed, you can banish this instead. And that only applies specifically to Revendread Slayer. It's mentioned by name on that, which is why you can use pre-preparations of rites to summon to get both this and this from your deck to your hand. While I'm explaining the Vendreads, I might as well just go over their monsters. The big thing about them is that if they're on the field and you use them as ritual material for Slayer, then Slayer will get an effect. If you use Strix, then after damage calculation, if Slayer battled an opponent's monster, you can draw a card and then discard a card. Good for setting up your graveyard. Vendread Houndhorde is once per turn. During either player's turn, you can target a spell trap your opponent controls and banish it. And Revenants is once per turn during either player's turn, target a special summoned monster your opponent controls and banish it. So there's some pretty good incentive to putting these on the field and then using them as fodder, not just putting them into the graveyard, because then Slayer gets really powerful effects, banishing spell traps or monsters respectively, possibly even both if you use both of them. Strix effect, not so much is important, but it has another effect that's when it's sent to the graveyard, you can reveal a Vendread in your hand and special summon it. And that can be good just for putting monsters on the field, either for Synchro summons or to use for Shiranui-style Samsara or Shiranui-style Swallow Slash. Which I guess I'll go ahead and explain that while I'm here. You contribute one zombie monster, target 2 cards on the field, destroy them, then banish one Shiranui monster from your deck. You can only activate once per turn. This is just great in general because most of these cards you want in the graveyard, or if nothing else, you can use them in the graveyard. So it's a really good first turn play to just put out like a Mizuki, set this, and then when your opponent does stuff, you can blow up 2 of their cards, put your Mizuki in the graveyard, and then you get to banish a Shiranui, and your Shiranuis get effects when they're banished as well, which leads me into the Shiranuis. Spirit Master, when it's normal summoned, you can special summon a Shiranui from your hand or graveyard, but it's banished when it leaves the field. That's alright. Its main effect, though, is that when this card is banished, you can target a face-up card your opponent controls and destroy it, which works really well with Swallow Slash, because that's basically tribute 1 zombie, destroy 3 cards your opponent controls. Just one of them has to be face-up. You can also use this pretty good with Gold Sarcophagus, just banish it to pop one card on the field. The other major Shiranui, Solitaire, when it's banished, you can summon one of your banished Shiranui monsters. So if you have Spirit Master or Spectral Sword already banished, you can get it back onto the field using this, and then use it for Synchros or Ixies or whatever need be. And then additionally, if Shiranui Style Synthesis is on the field, you can summon 2 monsters, and this counts as Shiranui Style Synthesis while it's on the field. So if you have this, you banish Solitaire again, either with Swallow Slash or Gold Sark, then you're going to be able to summon like this and a Spectral Sword, and you've got a level 6 Synchro to go into. Probably more importantly, though, is Solitaire is really good for starting your Synchro engine, so we'll finally get to how to make Psyframelord Omega. You can tribute 1 zombie monster, special summon a zombie tuner with 0 defense from your deck. Most of the time you can tribute this to go into Unizombie. You can also go into Spectral Sword, but most of the time you want to go into Unizombie. Unizombie has 2 effects. First, you can target a monster on the field, discard a card, increase that target's level by 1. Second, you can send a zombie-type monster from your deck to the graveyard to target a monster on the field and increase that target's level by 1. Although if you use that effect, only zombies can attack that turn. Not really all that important, although if you make a Omega, it won't be able to attack the turn you use that. But the basic combo you want to do is Solitaire, tribute itself to get Unizombie. Unizombie can send Mizuki to the graveyard. Mizuki, if you don't know, you can banish from your graveyard to special summon a zombie from your graveyard. So you special summon Solitaire back out. Now you have 4 and 4 because you've raised its level with its effect. And then you go into Psyframelord Omega. Of course, you can also make Shogun Saga. You can also make a whole bunch of level 8 synchros. Whatever you want, really. You can, of course, make other level synchros. That's why we're playing the 4s and the 6s and the 5s. Just because you can get different things depending on all the different level Vendreads and Shiranuis that we have. In addition, if you make it level 4 and summon a level 4, you can then go into rank 4s. I only play 2 of them, but you can, of course, play more if you want to. And, of course, you can also use those to make Link monsters, in particular Cossack Magicians, because it's 2 monsters with the same type. We're playing all zombies, so it's not that difficult to use this to get something on the field, and then just make an Akashic Magician. In addition, if you're fighting a really strong battle, maybe you can't mill or you don't want to, you can use this effect to return one of your banished Mizukis back to the graveyard and summon this back next turn. That's actually one of the main things that people use this for in zombies. You return Mizuki, next turn you can summon another Solitaire, do the same thing again. Psyframelord Omega's other effect, if you're unfamiliar, is during either player's main phase, you can banish this card and 1 random card from your opponent's hand until your next standby phase. So not only is this good for removing resources from your opponent's hand, but especially in Link format, this will take it out of the extra monster zone, and when it returns, since it didn't come from the extra deck, you can put it in the main monster zone. So that'll open up space in order for you to make a Synchro monster next turn. And again, like I said, if you could set up things other ways, you can use this, put your Necroface back into the graveyard, combine it with Spectral Sword, make a level 6 Synchro, then you're banishing again, next turn you put Omega, put it back again, and just keep making more things with it over and over again. And if you get filled up with Synchro monsters, you can then Link summon them, summon things back. There's just a lot of combos you can do, although usually it's just easier to beat down with Omega and bigger Synchros. The only things left I didn't mention, the Vendreads, the other ones have effects as well. Hound Horde, if this card is in the graveyard, you can discard a Vendread to special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field. Mildly useful again because you can ritual summon Slayer from the graveyard, so it really doesn't hurt you at all to discard this to summon this, because once this is on the field, then you can have Slayer get its effect. Revenant, if it's in your possession and it's destroyed by an opponent's card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it. Rarely comes up because this is rarely battling on its own, although it does have 1800, so it's a pretty decent beat stick. We're also playing Twin Twisters. This is just good spell trap removal. We don't really like back row all that much. We kind of have a way to deal with it with Hound Horde, so this is a little extra, and it helps you get stuff in the graveyard. And then finally, Vendread Knights, our field spell. You can discard 1 card, add 1 Vendread monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use this once per turn, and then when a Vendread monster destroys a monster by battle, you can vanish a Vendread from your graveyard, and it can attack another monster in a row. That second effect rarely comes up unless they really swarm. Mainly it's just here because, again, you can put any of your things into the graveyard while searching through Vendreads. Put the Necroface in there, put the Spectral Sword, Mizuki, lots of, even Strix, if you send that to the graveyard, it's coming immediately back out. And even Slayer, again, you can ritual summon from the graveyard, so discarding it to get something that you can use for its summon is a good tactic. And really, that's just about it. Like, this deck is really versatile. It mills, it beats down. I guess I should mention why I kept the mill in here, even though you don't mill all that much. Using the Necroface over and over again, I'm finding it actually can be pretty effective. There's a lot of decks now. Either they're really reliant on combo pieces, and banishing 5 or 10 of their cards can really disrupt their deck and make it unable for them to get searches, or they're not reliant on combo pieces, in which case they're usually already playing Pot of Desires. So if they're milling 10 cards and you're milling another 10 cards, half their deck is taken out of the picture. And a lot of times they can't come back from that, especially if you're putting up a huge monster while you're milling them. So this sort of crazy combination of having toolbox and removal with the Vendreads, and also swarming with high attack monsters. A lot of people don't know how to deal with so many different problems at once. Of course, if you want, you can always streamline this a little bit more, make it a little bit more consistent, try to focus it down on something, but I found this really effective. That's really where sort of the extra deck comes into. Preparations of Rites, if you want to focus more on the Revendread ritual engine, this can search them out. There's also another Revendread ritual monster. It can banish a zombie from the graveyard to negate the activation of effect that would destroy. This can be really useful. I didn't particularly find it useful, but, you know, if you're going against a heavy destruction deck, you could put this in. Or, again, if you want to focus more on the Vendread ritual part of this, if you want to focus more on the Synchros, there's a whole lot of options. There's more Link monsters you can add in as soon as they come out. There's more Ixies I didn't even put on here. You can put a whole bunch of rank 4s, rank 3s in here. You could put Destiny Hero Malicious. It's level 6, so you can use it the entire tribute for Slayer. And if you put it in the graveyard, you can banish to someone another copy of itself. So there's a lot of synergy with the deck. And then, of course, just more Twin Twisters. So there's a whole bunch of stuff this deck can do. Really kind of a mess, but it works surprisingly well. I'd highly recommend trying it out, at least. That's it for this week. Next week, I think I'm going to be looking at something a little weathery. Until then, good luck. Have fun.